Hello, hello. After a long hiatus, I am very happy to welcome you to Retrospective Rants, with me, Joey Huff, as your host. Today's episode is a little different, as rather than a strictly arts-focused episode, I'd like to talk about something more socially focused, specifically the idea of a woke right? Huh. Now, woke. That's a term that people like to throw around a lot, and in all sorts of affirmative and negative tones. People who think of the term woke in a negative light paint it as an oddly exclusionary philosophy, which claims to adhere to classically liberal ideas of subsidized healthcare, education, and robust outreach for those in economic distress. But the woke left is most readily characterized by the employment of emotional manipulation over constructive reasoning and a desire for ideological purity. Not purity as in consistency of belief, but in the proud and aggressive expulsion of any opinion or idea that might criticize their methods, the motives of their particular members, and particularly in the often false equivalencies they draw between social groups and any political events ongoing or long past that surround those groups. The woke left searches for social injury, real or perceived, whether it occurred in the distant past or the current day, and will seek out any guilty party to punish, regardless of whether that party deserves it or not. For example, J.K. Rowling, the author of the Harry Potter series, has for the longest time been viewed as a modern feminist paragon and a strong advocate of LGBT rights. And that's where the trouble started, because Rowling ardently disapproves of the inclusion of men, aka trans women, in women's sports, competitions, and prisons. She even goes so far as to call such inclusion anti-feminist and cruel towards real women. Because of this one ideological difference, which you have to remember is being measured against all of the other progressive policies that Rowling has and does advocate, the woke left has branded her a traitor to the cause. They call her a Nazi, and they brand her with all of the other terms they throw at those who disagree with them. Up till now, the term woke was solidly affiliated with progressive or contemporary liberal politics. So much so that many in the United States, who still consider themselves classically liberal, have distanced themselves from the woke left and have found a home in the moderate right. Yet whatever peace they might have found is once again under threat, because there is a growing fear that those same exclusionary, aggressive, and frankly elitist tendencies are rising again, this time from a woke right? But what is the woke right? What does it look like? How many members does it have? And most importantly, is it growing in number? Is it prevalent? These are very paranoid-sounding questions, but relevant to the issue. Firstly, the woke right are conservatives, the most loud and annoying of whom are individuals who identify as Christian, and they wish to exclude people from the conservative sphere due to disagreements over specific and personal ideas, despite any general agreements in political ideas. One of the most startling examples of this came in the negative reaction that many conservatives had towards Vice President J.D. Vance. But why? Why don't they like him? Is he a casual Catholic? Is he actually pro-choice? Does he think religion is a secondary priority in life? No, it isn't any one of these reasons. No, the woke right dislikes J.D. Vance because his wife, his very conservative wife, Usha Vance, is not a Christian. And that's it. Never mind that both her and her husband's views on illegal immigration, education, the government, and especially free speech are all conservative. The fact that she is not Christian is enough to make the woke right dislike and distrust J.D. Vance. I'm gonna go on a little tangent here. You see, my high school teachers taught me that reliance on examples is the lowest and weakest form of argumentation, but I'm going to disappoint them here because I have not done a statement or essay like this in a while, so examples are all I've got. Sorry. At last year's Republican National Convention, Harmeet Dillon, a conservative lawyer and the current nominee for the Assistant Attorney General for the Civil Rights Division, said a Sikh, as in a non-Christian, prayer during her speech. Many Christians viewed this with disdain, and the most vocal of them likened it to a demon summoning. Okay, so Harmeet Dillon is not a Christian. Fine. She also spearheaded the resistance against the more draconian ideas and policies that were about to be implemented and were implemented during the COVID pandemic. She also helped file a lawsuit against organizations who purposefully spread misinformation concerning so-called gender-affirming care, meaning puberty blockers, surgery, and the many long-term side effects that come with them. All of those things she criticized and tried to fight against. All of this should leave no doubt in the people's mind that she is a firm opponent of the woke left. And yet, members of an increasingly woke right think that her inclusion into the ranks of the conservative movement is wrong, and they are willing to cut ties with the other conservatives who disagree with them. One last example, I promise. Scott Presler is a conservative activist who is credited with rallying Pennsylvania to vote for President Trump in last year's election. He's also campaigned against voter fraud and headed several Stop the Steal demonstrations in accordance with the notion that former President Biden's election was a result of cheating. Now, look, I know this is a contentious topic, but if you really think that the election was honest, then all Scott Presler is doing is keeping it honest. That's it. So, let it be. Yet even with all these contributions, a vocal minority of conservatives are decrying him because they feel he is not a true Republican or a true conservative. Because he's gay. And Scott Presler also helped coordinate several March Against Sharia rallies in opposition towards the potential spread of radical Islam. He is also a firm believer in the Second Amendment, even crediting the defense of the Second Amendment as one of the key reasons he supported President Trump over Hillary Clinton in the 2016 election. But because he's gay, the Puritans of the conservative movement decry him as a false brother, and some other things that I don't feel comfortable repeating. Looking at the circumstances surrounding these three people, VP Vance, Harmeet Dillon, Scott Presler, I'm sure you can see a pattern. Their political views and the policies they support are all very conservative. But because of a personal belief, a singular personal belief, or preference, or even an association, the woke right will shout abuse at them. These disagreements, or differences, whatever you'd like to call them, are not even relevant to the administration of the government. They're entirely personal, minute even. And yet it is still enough to induce a passionate and aggressive response with the intention of barring these people from the larger movement. This is a direct mirror of the woke left's own MO, and should, in my opinion, be treated with the same amount of ridicule. How did it come to this? How did all of this happen? How did wokeism jump from one aisle to the other? That's pretty extreme, right? And that's the reason. Extremism. Just as the woke left justifies their actions as a reprisal against those who they feel have wronged them, the woke right now seeks to do the same. That's all it is. They feel wronged, and they feel entitled to revenge. So much so that it makes them ignorant of the hypocrisy of their attitude. They are ignorant of the damage it's doing to their own cause, and they have no regard for the innocent parties affected by this. Now, yes, there has been a concentrated effort by woke leftists to drive Christian and conservative values from the public consciousness, and there's no point in denying that. If you are someone who disagrees with the idea of Christian values or philosophies being in schools or in government, and you wish them to be kept out, then you believe that keeping them out is the right thing to do. There's no point in hiding that or being ashamed. Yet, that campaign is no justification for Christians to turn around and behave the same way. It is certainly not a justification for pushing away people who are fighting for the same nation and the same national conditions that we are. I say this not only because the woke right is unsustainable, but because advocating for a woke right is unchristian. Think of this from a purely pragmatic perspective. We as conservatives and Christians cannot afford to drive away fellow conservatives, least of all because of minor personal differences. Trump won the election because the woke left drove so many people into the conservative vote, all because of their inability to compromise and their unwillingness to abandon any cause they might have initially taken up, no matter how clearly insane or self-defeating it may have been. They did this, they continued to do this, they continue to do this, and they lost. If we don't want to lose, we can't do this either. That's all there is to it. What about ideology? If we are Christians, if we are disciples of Christ, and we spread the word of Christ, can we really march shoulder to shoulder with those who live outside his words? Can we call ourselves Christians if we'd walk the same streets and towards the same hopes as supposed heathens and ideological opponents? Yes, we can. Because Christ did that. Christ did not preach or teach or work his miracles in the halls of earthly power. He walked the streets, talked in the public square, and spoke with the average person. He did not dictate policy, he did not poll voters, and he did not coordinate election campaigns for the Roman Senate. This is because a government, be it a republic or empire, is not meant to be a tool of conversion of its citizens. The purpose of a national government is to maintain the conditions needed for its citizens to live and prosper in peace and cooperation. It is not meant to dictate the nature of people's existence or decide what will make them happy, and it is certainly not meant to monitor the minutiae of each person's personal beliefs. Every time a government has forgotten that fact, the results have been oppressive, cruel, and in the case of religious governments, it has done lasting damage to the trust and outside perception of any organized religion. I believe that pattern is another warning from Christ, because the chances of tainting the universal truth and the sacred mysteries of God with the myriad and ever-evolving passions of the world is too high. We cannot drive away those who would protect individual freedoms and call ourselves conservatives. We cannot use the name of God as a shield for our own worldly insecurities and call ourselves Christians. For the sake of not only the conservative movement, but for the nation that we all love, we must pursue peace and goodwill amongst each other. Otherwise, we have no right to expect them anywhere. Well, there's my rant on the woke right. If you'd like to check out my other content, you can find all episodes of Retrospective Rants on Spotify and iTunes, and you can also read my written works on Wattpad. Thank you so much for listening, and have a good one.